Hey everybody, Chris from chrisrec.com here. Just wanted to shoot a quick video. I've been receiving a lot of questions. A lot of people have been sending me their native ads, especially in the Facebook group. By the way, if you're not in the Facebook group, you can join down below. It's free to join. Nothing for sale in there or anything like that. So you can join that down there. A lot of people are already getting value from that. So and I'm in there pretty much all the time. So you can ask me questions and everything like that in the Facebook group. So join that down below. But one thing I've noticed in a lot of native ads that people are running, mostly I prefer running native. So that's why a lot of people who are in that group run native or send me their native ads, but also some Facebook ads and stuff like that as well, mobile, is that, so what I've noticed is that, and I just see this a lot, so that's why I wanted to do this video today, is that people are not being specific enough in their ads. And it's something I see a lot. And even just this morning I was on a spy tool just searching for skincare, for example, and a lot of these ads will just be very generic, and they will just say something like fix your wrinkles, fix your skin, or something like that, and they aren't very specific. And I think it just kind of clicked with me this morning. This is kind of going to be a rambling video, by the way, because I didn't really plan this out, but it's just something that kind of popped into my head is going through my own ads and things like that. I don't say anything about if I'm doing a wrinkle ad, for example, skincare, I won't say necessarily anything about wrinkles. I will pick a very specific pain point. This is where research comes into play. This is why you need to research. If you want to know how I do research, it's a long series, but if you go through my writing a native ad series, I talk a lot about how I do research, where I do it, mostly forums, Reddit, and pretty much anywhere where people post information or ask questions and things like that. And what you'll notice is, again, if somebody has like a skincare problem, if they have wrinkles somewhere, they're not just gonna they don't go onto a forum and say, I have wrinkles, I want them fixed. They're very, very specific about it. They say, I have, forehead wrinkles, or I have wrinkles under my eyes, or bags under my eyes. So they're getting more and more specific on what their problem is. It's your job as an affiliate to figure out which one of those points is going to be the most effective. Could be under eye bags. And again, this changes every single year. I talk about this a lot, how, it just seems like every single year it changes from one thing to another depending on what industry you're in. Again, if you're running skincare, we'll just keep using skincare as an example. Maybe one year it's like whatever they call this here, the neckline wrinkles. Next year it might be under eye bags. The year after that it might be cheek wrinkles. The year after that it might be forehead wrinkles. Again, it just seems to change from year to year to year. Some of these things last for years. It depends, again, on the age group you're going after, the type of person you're going after, all this other stuff. So getting more specific and not just saying skincare or not just saying wrinkles is one thing that I think a lot of people could do that would probably take them from making nothing to at least seeing conversions. Maybe still not profitable, because again, there are some other factors that kind of come into play here that I think would be important. The other thing that I would like to talk about is kind of along the same lines is pain points. I've been reading a lot of your native ads, for those of you who have been sending them in, and a lot of you, again, your pain points aren't specific enough to the problems that these people are experiencing in a lot of ways. I think about somebody was talking about blood pressure, I believe, in one of their native ads, and I don't want to give too much detail away here because I don't want to, expose their ad or anything like that. But they were talking about having to constantly, take the blood pressure and, all this other stuff and having to check it from home. And, what I asked that person is, I said, is that really a problem? Do most people who have high blood pressure, is their main problem really having to check it, and do they really check it? I happen to know some people who have high blood pressure problems, and they don't have home-based blood pressure checking systems. Most of them don't check that. The other niche I think about a lot is diabetes as well, because I know some of you are in diabetes, and it's the same thing. Like, it's like a lot of people like to write diabetes ads and talk about diets and things like that, but if you know anything about diabetes, a lot of people who have diabetes, and again, I'm not picking on anybody here that has diabetes, but if you know about the main group of people who have diabetes, some of them cheat. They don't want to be on a diet and things like that. So it's like, are your pain points actually pain points in the first place, and are they going in the right direction? Are they talking about the right thing? I think these are all questions you need to ask yourself. And again, research, going on forums, reading what these people write and figuring out what their actual pain points are is really important. For blood pressure, for example, just after doing a little bit of research, One that we kind of were able to kind of flesh out of that niche was salt. Believe it or not, I would have never, I know that if you have high blood pressure, you're supposed to watch your salt intake, but I never thought it would really be that big of a pain point. But we saw a pretty significant increase in conversions just by adding in, kind of talking about salt and talking about the pain point and kind of bringing it up on a, much larger basis. The other thing is fear of death with high blood pressure. A lot of people with high blood pressure are told that they're going to have a heart attack and all this other stuff. So, just kind of laying into that fear can be way more significant than just talking about, having to do home-based blood pressure tests or things like that. So knowing what those pain points are important. The final thing that I want to talk about here is images. A lot of people keep asking me about images and what images I use and things like that. And also after looking, and again, this is something that just struck me today because, again, after looking at a bunch of ads right now, it finally kind of hit me that a lot of the people who are not being as, who are probably not as successful as they could be, the images they're using are like stock images. Stock images do not work really well, or they are using the typical, we'll call it like the typical native ad image. What you have to realize is you have to stand out, especially in native, especially if you're running native. You really need to stand out because of the cost. Again, if you're not getting really high CTRs, you're not going to do very well at all with native ads. So having images that stand out is really important. I've talked about this before. I actually have a video. I'll try to remember to link it down below about, me. I take my own photos. If you're not a creative person, that's fine. Just knowing how to manipulate photos is a good idea. And also hiring somebody. There are plenty of people you can hire on Fiverr. I think Fiverr even, but also Upwork. I actually think Upwork is a lot cheaper nowadays because, Fiverr has allowed people to charge more than $5. So most of the creative types on Fiverr charge, a lot more than $5 to, say, edit an image or something along those lines. So that's definitely something to think about. Like I said, I prefer Upwork. That's where I hire most of my creative people from. So that's where I would go if I were you. But I would be looking at trying to make images that are successful stand out. So, changing the filter on the image, changing contrast, whatever it is that you can possibly do to make it look different is what I would do. The other option is somebody was talking about hand-drawn images. Hand-drawn images do work. I do use hand-drawn images, but not really on native, number one. And they can work on native. I have seen hand-drawn images work on native, but you're not working with a lot of space. A native ad is only like this big. It's really tiny. For me, if you're doing something like Google Display Network, or if you're doing somewhere where they allow larger ads like Facebook, hand-drawn images can work well. But again, hire somebody to do that. Thinking back to when I started, again, just upping my image game had really, really significantly helped me, especially, since I was like starting out on Facebook and running ads on Facebook and things. Being able to have an image that captures somebody's eye is really, really important. And again, finding the right person is what's important there. I don't really consider myself very creative unless it's coming up with, again, native ads or something like that where I'm writing. Then I can be creative there. But as far as images are concerned, I don't really have an eye for images that I think are going to work or what's not going to work. Or whenever I try to come up with something, it's always garbage. So what I do is I've hired a couple people that I've worked with for years, and I just give them ideas or a general direction. If I'm spying and I see an ad, I say, hey, create me something like this along these lines. I need you to put something together like this, and I just let them run with it. And I test those images from there. So that is what I would suggest you do. Is again, find somebody who's more creative than you. Again, I've just received a lot of questions from people in the group about images, and like I said, I think that some of us like people who are more into running ads, we might not necessarily be creative types. We might be more interested. We might be too analytical or something like that. I don't know. Half the time when I think an image is going to work, it doesn't. And then when I test something that I think is just garbage, it is something that works. I've said this time and time again. It's usually like the crappiest images that I think that aren't going to work. As a matter of fact, one of the people who works for me that I've hired from Upwork, they, when I was first interviewing on Upwork, I hired a bunch of people at once and just tested all the images at once, which I recommend you do. You can get on there, you can get images done for like $5 a piece. I went on there, I hired like 3 or 4 people in the beginning, and then since I've gone through a few more, and right away I just got a bunch of images from all of those people and ran through the tests, and it was actually the person whose images I liked the least that did the best. So again, just test. I keep telling this to people as well, just test. Don't try to to guess. Don't try to think, oh, this is going to work, this isn't going to work, because usually it's like the ugliest thing that works, or something that you don't think is going to work that is going to work. Final thought on images as well is, again, don't get too creative. Like I said, sometimes I get too excited. I have this crazy idea for an image that I think is going to look really amazing, and it doesn't work. Again, I find that sometimes like the most plain images, the most simple images that still have a kind of an element that jumps out is what works best. It's when I try to get too creative, when I add too many colors, when I make it look too fancy, that is when things don't work. So I will leave you with that right there. I will stop playing with that rubber band. And thank you for watching. Again, group in the description down below.